In the last session, listeners, we traversed across the various system of classification, how we classify organisms, identify them, group them, make taxonomy groups, and so on and so forth. Today, I am going to take you to the world of biological classification, how people started classifying organisms, how we had two big kingdoms, and thereafter into 3 and then 4 and then 5, and there I waited and I talked about 5 kingdom theory of Whittaker. But I must tell the listeners that yes, we have traveled into the 6th kingdom and we have been doing it for a long time. So we do have in the modern world of taxonomy the 6 kingdoms. Let's take the journey, start with all that was being done long ago. And I'm sure you know that biologists and various scientists, they were eager how to group and classify some of the plants and animals. So how did they do it? Those fruits and vegetables that were edible would be grouped into one, and those that were considered to be poisonous would be placed into another. And animals, those that we could domesticate and those that were considered as wild. However, similarly, there were plants that were considered to be weed. We didn't know about anything about the qualities. And those that would provide food were grouped under another wonderful name called crops. And this kind of simple classification, although it looked simple, but it was good enough for that time, it was being suggested and followed by great scientists like Theophrastus, Dioscorides, and Pliny. Later on, it was Aristotle who gave a little better idea, and he would group the green world, or rather I would say the plants, into trees and shrubs and herbs and so on and so forth. And he really classed animals into 2 groups, anemia, as we learned in the other session. Then the father of botany, Theophrastus, he classified plants into 4 groups: herbs, undershrubs, shrubs, trees. And subsequently we came across the Linnean classification into 2 big groups. Actually, the biological classification started then. He was the person who classed the living world into 2 major groups, Plantae, Animalia. And what was his basic method or relevance or criteria for classification? He grouped all those that had cell wall into one group called Plantae, and the others that they didn't have would be placed into Animalia. And this was the clear-cut difference between the 2 groups. But the question was, his method, which primarily was structured or rather classified on the basis of sexual organs, didn't last much until we had the 3rd and 4th and 5th and 6th divisions. But those times we had a problem. Linnean classification, although very, very famous, we had some problems with organisms like Euglena. Such organisms wouldn't fit into either of the 2 groups. You know, Euglena has chloroplast and they carry out photosynthesis. But at the same very time, Euglena has a flagellum, which is an animal-like character, as we all know that now. Now, where do we put them? And you know, the Euglena also showed a wonderful characteristic to engulf other organisms and digest them, just like an animal would do it. So where would you put them? Into plants or animals? And then there was another problem. There were similar organisms which were kept in separate groups. Yes, the diatoms, for example, and the protozoans. And they had these characteristics of both and they were not given a clear-cut division or a group where they could have been kept. The fungi, for example, yes, we know that the fungi would not photosynthesize, although they had a cell wall, and therefore their position was clearly debatable. We didn't have the place for viruses. We didn't have the place for mycoplasma. And only two modes of nutrition were recognized: photosynthesis and ingestion. What about saprophytic, saprozoic kind of nutrition? They had no place altogether. So we had problems. Cytologically as well. Bacteria, for example, cyanobacteria, for example, they were all grouped under plants. Now, bacteria are not eukaryotes. So it is not only the cell wall issue, it is not only the prokaryotes and eukaryotes issue, there were many others. Some could photosynthesize, some could not, and some were autotrophic, some were heterotrophic. For example, we had autotrophic plants and heterotrophic fungi, and rather saprophytic. And we had another group, Animalia, which was altogether different. So these cumbersome, these problematic issues came in, and the bacteria, in fact, posed a great problem. It had cell wall like that of a plant, but it had flagella, and therefore, and also, most of them cannot make their food. And at the same very time, some can even make their food. Some are photosynthetic as well. So, more discoveries, more organisms, more artificial method of classification, more confusions, more problems. So, we had to think of another route. Scientists, therefore, grouped all organisms into three divisions.